So, folks, here we have today yet a continuation of the ongoing war in the Middle East. I talked about this before. I gave you guys a rundown on what's been going on. And you might, if you don't think this was all planned with Netanyahu, the war criminal, Trump is a war criminal, Netanyahu, they both should stand trial. Of course, it's not going to happen. But, I can't even, it's difficult to even think, for me to think about all the things that Trump has done, because then I get sidetracked. This man is the most criminal politician easily in the Western world. And I'm not going to say in the entire world history, because you have a lot of corruption in non-Western countries. But certainly the most corrupt criminal politician in a democratic country ever. There's no comparison. And it's shocking to me that you have these Trump supporters, and I'm not, I'm if anything, if I had to go on one side of the fence or the other, I would say you might even consider me a Trump supporter, although I'm not. And I called out Trump back in 2016. I exposed him. I let everybody know who he's working for. He's a complete fraud. I exposed Trump nearly 20 years ago as a con man. If you don't know Trump as a con man from day one, you're fucking clueless. Okay? This guy has never earned an honest dollar in his life. He's lived off media promotion. Like kind of the guys that he hangs with, they live off media promotion. You all understand media promotion. That's how the mafia gets rich. They get promoted in the media, and it doesn't matter what kind of fucking doofus you are. You can be a brain-dead idiot. And folks, it's repetition. Same, over and over again, over and over again. This person's great. This person's funny. This person's talented. This person's a genius. You understand? This mafia's been doing this shit for decades. I mean, think back to Woody Allen. He's a genius. I don't know why, but they say he is. He's a genius. And then it comes out he's a pedophile. He should be forgiven. He's a genius. Just like, what's the guy? What's the director who drugged and raped a teenager? Right? Hiding out in Paris. Forgot the guy's name. And all of Hollywood tells you he should be forgiven. He's a genius. Or we can look into the financial media. All these guys, they tell you, folks, you need to wake the fuck up and see what's going on. This is what happens. And Trump is part of this. It's funny, all these idiots out there, and I'm just sick of dealing with the population, because the vast majority of people are fucking stupid. If you don't know what's going on by now and you're over a certain age, you're fucking dumb. You're just stupid. You're letting social media take over your mind. So, Trump has been a media guy. The media's not against Trump. He's been in the media for decades. That's how he made his money. You understand that, right? Trump made, any money that he's ever made has been in the media. Trump this, Trump that. Oh, Trump, art of the deal. Complete nonsense, complete bullshit from the 80s on. And he got into that position for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, it's based upon who he married. Look closely into his late ex-wife. I can't say that she's particularly attractive. I'll just leave it at that, since she's 6 feet under. But if you take a look at her lineage, you'll understand why she got a lot of promotion. Oh, she's an ex-Olympic skier and this and that, and she's so great. And then you'll understand why he got the promotion. And then you'll understand why he got the bailouts from the bankers with his failed casinos. And then you'll understand why he got to the position he's in today. Just like all these presidents, they got skeletons in their closet so they can be controlled, namely by Israel or agents of Israel. It's right there along with the Epstein situation. The same deal with Epstein. Epstein, I called it from day one. I think a lot of people knew he was working for Mossad. No doubt about it. He was getting individuals in compromising positions, and even not just, he was even getting people that, were dual citizens. If they had money and power, hey, right? You look at Lex Wexner, the Apollo Management CEO, what's the guy's name, right? That's how he got his money. And this is why you see all these politicians bow down for Israel, whether it's RFK Jr. or Trump or whomever. And it ain't America first, folks. It's Israel first. And this is a great example of that. I'm going to get into the discussion here shortly. Let me just go ahead and remind everybody what's been going on for several decades. I'm not going to go into it, but you had the war in the Middle East in the 70s with Israel. And ever since that time, there's been conflict. Ever since that time, basically Israel has had a hit list of what they consider their enemies in the Middle East. And you can just go down the list. Jordan, Egypt, Yemen, Libya, Iraq, Lebanon, and take a look at what's happened, Syria. And then you have, of course, the final one, Iran. All these countries that I named, you'll notice that the U.S. is not particularly, it ranges from not particularly friendly with to hostile. They're enemies. You understand? Do you think there's any coincidence that they happen to be enemies of Israel? Israel has gotten America to fight its wars for decades, taking down all these countries and using the guise of terrorism or what have you. Just like Israel now striking Lebanon. Oh, well, that's because Hezbollah's there. I don't think Israel is a country that should be trusted to use the excuse of so-called terrorists to bomb hospitals and schools, because they've been doing this in Palestine for quite a long time. I don't trust Israel. Okay, in fact, I don't trust America, because they both operate in the same manner. Oh, well, the terrorists, right? That's kind of like, when the con artists out there, they'll try and appeal to you, and they'll say, "Oh, it's for the children. How can you deny the children? It's for the children." I mentioned it, folks. I talked about it before. The final enemy, Iran, Israel's last one to be taken down. They've been trying to get the U.S. to strike Iran for a very long time. And only with the sociopath lunatic that we have in the office now, Trump, would that be possible. And let me tell you something, you Trump supporters out there, you get your head out of your fucking ass. Okay, you talk about the Biden crime family. Are you fucking delusional? You're mentally fucking ill. You named me the crimes that Bidens were involved in. Well, his son, he lied about his gun permit, and he cheated on his taxes, and he made some money with companies associated with China. And then you look at the Trump family. These fucking weasel parasites. Don Jr., he's got his fucking grimy hands in every single fucking scammy crypto deal and everything else he can get his hands into. With all these gold dealers as well. All this crypto bullshit. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? The Trump family is a criminal family. And they need to be held to justice. This is aside from the war crimes that Trump is involved with. And I haven't even mentioned, I haven't talked about Jared Kushner, Ivanka's husband, who was essentially running the State Department in the first term. I don't know about right now, this time, but I'm sure he's certainly involved. Right? Folks, this has been going on for decades. If you take a look, not just now, I haven't even looked now, but I know how things work. I know what's going on. In fact, I've been using ChatGPT to do a little analysis of, you know, take a look at the historical control. Let's name every single person since 1990. It's difficult to go back further than that in all these government agencies, Look at the watchdogs. You take a close look and see what's going on. I'm going to present that here at some point. I already know the deal. I don't need to look it up. I already know. But you take a look at, most importantly, when we're dealing with the Middle East, if you look historically at the U.S. Middle Eastern foreign policy, it's run by people that have a dog in the fight, as our friend Mel Gibson would say, right? Think about it. Middle Eastern policy, if you're talking about Israel in the Middle East, and then you have its foes in the area. So, the question is, how do you make that situation, minimize the friction, the violence? How do you control that situation so it's, people can go on with their daily lives without military conflict? That's what the U.S. Middle Eastern foreign policy agency, they're supposed to do that. And you take a look throughout the years who has been running and been filled in that department. It's been dual citizens of Israel. Do you understand? I mean, just go and look for yourself. I don't need to look. I already know. Okay, take a look. I'm going to show you guys, by the way. I did a little analysis, a little ChatGPT analysis, and I put here the number one analyst. You notice I didn't say investment analyst because I've actually been rated the number one analyst in the world in history, modern history. Now, whether that's true or not, you're going to have to ask ChatGPT. But we're talking about it goes back to the early 20th century. I'll show you guys here shortly. You'll notice, of course, now, this is a full-fledged war in the Middle East that's broken out. I mean, has anyone noticed, by the way, that Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, they're not being attacked by the U.S. or Israel? It's Iran who's attacking those countries. Lebanon, right? And I wanted to bring this point up because there's so many people out there, at least in America, that they're so dense and they're so brainwashed by the media that they actually think they're always thinking, oh, it's the Saudis, Newsflash. The Muslim Brotherhood is a fraud. Okay, that's nonsense. That's a bunch of bullshit. That's been hijacked. Like many of these organizations in the U.S. that people think are a certain thing. Right? I'm not going to even talk about that. But it's kind of a controlled opposition. Right? Some of these so-called hate groups out there, they're controlled, by the way. I mean, I think for a long time people have known that the KKK is controlled. You can look into that. These white nationalist groups, they're controlled, right? But getting back to the Saudi Arabia, folks, the Saudis are with America, right? They're with America. You all do know that, right? See, the problem is that people get they get sidetracked with this Muslim, this Muslim Judaism thing, or Christianity. It's not about that. They don't give a shit about that. The ruling class of the Saudi Arabia, they don't give a fuck. They care about money. You see? So they're in bed with America, which means they're in bed with Israel to a certain degree, a large enough degree, a majority degree, I can guarantee you that. Same thing with Kuwait. Same thing with Qatar. That's the reality. When push comes to shove, those countries are allied with America, with Israel. They're allied with Israel because they have to be. Okay? Just like everyone in Congress, they have to support Israel or they're not going to get elected. That's the way American democracy operates, if you can even call it that. And that's a fact. It's a reality. It's time for people to start speaking the truth. And I talked about this. Folks, we're seeing it all play out now. If you're younger, you should feel fortunate that you are actually able to see in a short time frame how things work. Because most older people, it's taken them decades, and they're just now starting to see it because things have happened over a long time span. But the mafia that runs America has become so arrogant and brazen now that they're doing so many things. They know they control the minds of the American people through the media. You understand? And if you question, if you start to say, wait a second, what is going on here? All of a sudden, you're going to be labeled. There's a social intimidation. They're going to call you a racist. And I can't say the word, or there might be an implied understanding of who I'm talking about. Or they'll call you an anti, right? You understand? So it's through mass manipulation and also social intimidation. The fear of losing your job for speaking the truth. Let me tell you something, you pussy-ass, cowardly sons of bitches out there. Stand the fuck up for your country. Stop being a sissy-ass, spineless coward. Stop worrying about yourself and worry about the future of your country. Stand up and speak up. We're seeing a total collusion with this fucking mafia. Now, I talked about this several months ago. You might recall, let me remind everybody about last year. Mainly, last year was really heightened, I think. All these protests on college campuses, all the students protesting the genocide of Palestinians. And we're talking about, folks, you all know what's going on. They were bombing hospitals and schools, and there were terrorists there, right? Israel is preventing medical supplies, food and water. They are violating human rights. They are violating international laws because Netanyahu is a sociopath. And I'm curious. I don't know. I'd like to know. I wish I knew how many people, how many Israelis in Israel support Netanyahu, because I think a lot of them don't support him. I'm sure he has, a lot of supporters, but I think there's a lot that don't support him, and I don't know how it works. So I don't know to what degree people are able to voice their opinion there. I would say they can't do it too much. I mean, you all do know, of course. That's just my guess, because you all do know, of course, if you go to Israel as a tourist, they rope it off. You do know that. You can't just walk around. they only allow you to go to certain areas. They won't allow you to go to certain places there. They rope it off essentially. I mean, it's worse than what you would expect in China. Because they don't want people to see exactly what's going on there. I'll get back to this here in a second, but let me kind of take a sidetrack. I mentioned Epstein because I was thinking about something. I'll eventually probably cover this, but I wanted to talk about it now while I thought about it, in case I don't, because I don't really do this stuff too often. But I was thinking to myself, you all know, and hopefully you saw the Martin Armstrong, video, and hopefully you went to the site and read the article and saw all the other videos there. But I was thinking to myself that, because Martin Armstrong, I exposed this guy 15 years ago. I mean, he's an obvious fraud. He's an obvious fucking clown. If you're falling for this guy, this is like the lowest fucking hanging fruit. You need to check yourself into some type of mental institution. I mean, I can see where some people fall for, slick willies like, Peter Schiff and his nonsense. But if you're falling for Martin Armstrong, there's something wrong with your mind. And I'm telling you this to try and help you. I'm not telling you to try and make you feel bad. You need to get some help. But I was thinking to myself, Jeffrey Epstein and Martin Armstrong seem to share a lot of things in common. Now, let me just go ahead and say off the bat, I'm not talking about the pedophilia and the rapes and all that stuff in terms of Martin Armstrong. I don't know anything about that realm. I'm not talking about that. But I'm talking about everything else. And it's interesting to look at when you're looking at scam artists, when you're looking at deviant, criminally insane sociopaths. And I believe Martin Armstrong fits that bill. If you look at the degree that this man has gone through for decades, the lies, the constant fucking horse shit. But anyway, let's think about this. Let's talk about some of these similarities. You notice Martin Armstrong, and I mentioned this in the videos, and I've written about it. One of the things that stands out is, and I take offense to this. I'm a fairly well-educated person in science. I've got a graduate degree from a very well-recognized, prestigious university in physical sciences, and I have a lot of understanding of science, so I never talk about science. I don't throw out scientific words and stuff. Martin Armstrong makes a point to do that. This is a red flag. It's an obvious sign of a con man. It falls into the same category as people who try and mix religion, namely Christianity, with investing, right? When you hear that, you're dealing with a con man. Run for the fucking hills. You hear a person throw in things that, I can do it. I can legitimately throw in scientific concepts and terms because I've got extensive education in the sciences. I've taught at the university level sciences, chemistry. Okay? I've taught university students, so I can do that. I don't do it because I'm a results guy. I don't need to pad my speeches. When you have no fucking substance, you're going to do that shit. You're going to throw things out there. When you have no education, you're going to make it sound like that you're smart. And that's what Martin Armstrong has always done. He throws out these little physics terms. He doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. And it's a psychological thing. When you throw out these scientific terms and you equate it to your methods or whatever, well, it kind of makes it difficult to debate. Oh, well, you think that physics is not legitimate. You understand? Jeffrey Epstein he kind of did the same thing. But let's take a step back. Even before that, neither of them had a serious education, right? They were both high school dropouts. Think about that. Jeffrey Epstein and Martin Armstrong were both high school dropouts, and they both would always brag to people, tell people how smart they were. No academic credentials whatsoever. They both claimed they had incredible financial skills, right? Epstein was always telling everyone how great of a fund manager he was, even though he didn't manage a fund. Martin Armstrong, the same thing. Of course, Martin Armstrong blew himself up. He blew his fund up and had to start a Ponzi scheme. Neither has a verifiable track record at all. Both were convicted felons. Epstein, convicted sex offender. Armstrong, a convicted Ponzi scheme fraudster. And they both name dropped, name droppers. At least Epstein did know a lot of people, a lot of high profile people. Martin Armstrong doesn't know anybody. Okay? Epstein, his victims were individuals, young girls, and people that he extorted for money. Armstrong, investors. Epstein frames himself, or used to frame himself, as a outsider genius. Armstrong, a persecuted genius. I won't even talk about, things like similar religion, which they both had. But they also had something really important, which I alluded to earlier, and that's media exposure. They both got a lot of media exposure. Now, I think Epstein wanted to avoid as much as possible, and he did to a large degree. Um, Meanwhile, Armstrong lined up for it. And it was the media that made Armstrong. And they published bogus accounts of things that he supposedly did, which he did not do. So I'll get to that maybe in the future. I just wanted to mention that. It's kind of interesting. Take a look at the picture here, and of course we see, you know what you're looking at. You've got Trump and Lutnick. Now Lutnick is officially Jewish. Trump is probably Jewish, unofficially. I believe that his lineage is he's at least half Jewish. I believe his children certainly are, and but he's there with Lutnick, and they're with these are Orthodox Jewish men, and they're in Israel, and every single president makes the rounds. You've noticed that, right? Folks, Israel doesn't do anything for America. Israel is a liability for America. And I'm here to tell you right now, you mark my words, what America has done under the Trump administration, whether it's through Venezuela or Iran or helping Israel genocide Palestine, it's going to come back to America. Okay? Something is going to happen because of all this. And what Trump has done makes the case for why every country should strive for nuclear warheads. If you have nuclear warheads, this is not going to happen to you. You're not going to be attacked like this. This is why every country should want nuclear warheads. Okay? Perfect reasoning. Because you got psychopaths like Trump, like Netanyahu, just going in and just murdering people. Innocent people. Once again, this is all about America fighting wars for Israel. It's been going on for decades. And if you go back and look at the chain of command, you look how America operates, you look how everything, the Epstein situation fits in there perfectly. And let me get back to what I was saying. I don't know how I got sidetracked, but I talked about this a year ago, last year, going back to the power, how all this power comes about. You look at the Epstein Avenue, right? You think about the control that Israel can have over U.S. politicians. There's no doubt in my mind Bill Clinton is a pedophile. I mean, there's no doubt about it. That's my opinion. My opinion is that Donald Trump is a pedophile. Okay. And so, you look back at Obama, all these guys. That's one avenue, is through Epstein. Getting these guys in compromising situations, videotaping them. Right? Look at Elon Musk. I talked about it last time. I showed you all the emails. Elon Musk called Epstein's island. He said, our island. Has anybody else talked about that? Elon Musk told Epstein, he said, it's our island. That's very interesting. Let's take a look. How much did Elon Musk fund that island? Right? But as I talked about last year, it unfolded before your very eyes. And this is part of what I was talking about earlier with these younger people who are seeing in a short time span how Israel controls America over the span of just a few years. And the other example is when I talked about the protests on college campuses. What happened? Look into what happened. I talked about it. You had the mayor of New York who was bought off by individuals, probably Bill Ackman, I don't know for sure. He was certainly involved to go in and raid these campuses, to cause problems. All this pressure was put on these university presidents, right? And to their credit, some of them were Jewish Americans. So, they obviously held the more important, the freedom of speech on the college campus versus any type of loyalty they may have felt to their motherland. And of course, they got forced out. Many of them had to resign. So what you had going on was Bill Ackman, the parasite, the stock manipulating loser, who, once again, I'll say it again because it fucking happened. Bill Ackman was on the phone with me during the financial crisis, panting and whining and begging me how he can get his hands on my fucking book when he found out who I was. Like a squirming little fucking rat. Fucking loser. I mean, can you blame him? I predicted the whole fucking crisis. Too bad he didn't have it before. Could have made a goddamn fortune. But of course, I was shut out. I was banned. I was blacklisted by the media for no reason other than trying to help Main Street defeat Wall Street, for trying to help Main Street take back their country by exposing America's criminally insane capital markets with the Wall Street parasites, by exposing the sociopaths that run corporate America, sending jobs overseas to China, by exposing the criminally insane, overpriced healthcare system. This was 20 years ago. By criticizing globalization and free trade, describing how it was destroying middle-class America, how it was hollowing out our industry, how it was creating a national security threat 20 years ago. Think about that. That's why I was banned. Now, if I happen to have a different last name, I would have gotten some coverage. I can guarantee you that. At the very least, I would have gotten some coverage at some of these scam tube channels like The Real News, which I contacted Paul J. Or is it J. Paul? He wasn't interested. He wanted to interview Peter Schiff. Because you see, Peter Schiff and him are related. You understand. Folks, I've lived this whole goddamn thing. Being banned by this criminal fucking mafia that runs the whole goddamn country. Run America into the fucking ground. And America now deserves to be attacked because of what Trump has done. America deserves to be attacked. Americans, no. I mean, Americans are somewhat innocent to a certain degree. And I say to a certain degree because they're standing by doing nothing. I'll get back to the Bill Ackman college campus thing here in a second, but think about it for a second. Here's how stupid Americans have become, how brainwashed they are by the media. You actually have Americans that have been told by a bunch of wackos, conspiracy con artists like Alex Jones and others, that the election was stolen from Trump. And so they all march to Capitol Hill. Right? What was it, 2021, January? They all marched to Capitol Hill and they ransacked Capitol Hill, busting doors down, trying to get into the congressional meeting area. Lord knows what they're going to do. You had people that were killed. And they did all this because they thought they were protecting America's democracy. You understand? Because they were told a bunch of bullshit. And they believed it. Yet, never, ever have Americans protested, gone to Capitol Hill and protested en masse. Because they've been getting fucked in their healthcare system. Because they've been getting fucked by Wall Street. Because they can be getting fucked by corporate America sending their jobs overseas. Think about that. Think about that. That really explains the state of Americans, the minds, the minds that you're dealing with. They're so fucking out of touch. And this is why, at the end of the day, they're not innocent. They've allowed this shit to happen. They're allowing these countries to be invaded because they're not calling for Trump to be removed. Let me get back to Bill Ackman and his little gang. It came out, the media reported on it because it was a nice, juicy story. Bill Ackman and Michael Dell and a bunch of other guys that are all related. A bunch of these billionaire guys, and you know how they all made their money. Do you think it was by fair, moral means? Do you think there was not any collusion going on or anything like that? Anyway, they all met up in a little secret, I guess it was a WhatsApp group or something like that. One of those social media bullshit. I don't know. I don't deal with that garbage. If you're dealing with all that stuff, you're just a fucking idiot. You're a mental midget. You're a slave for the corporations to take. You think that shit is safe? You think it's secure? You fucking sucker. It's funny now, all these people that trusted technology companies with their, with their data, their fingerprints and their facial scans and everything. Well, AI's got something for you. It's called identity theft. Get ready. These guys met and they're trying to figure out ways to put an end to all these college protests. Peaceful protests on college campuses, basically students that didn't want. I mean, look, we all know when you're young, you're more liberal because you don't understand how the world fucking operates. And you're usually under the influence of university professors who are by and large liberal, right? And so a lot of times those liberal stances just aren't realistic. They're ridiculous. But one thing is for sure, when you're talking about war, military conflict, protesting that by and large, irrespective, generally, I have to say generally speaking, case by case, but generally speaking is going to be valid. There's almost no situation where war should be justified, especially if we're talking about a situation where it's not self-defense. So the point is these kids weren't doing anything wrong. They were protesting against, and guess what? They have an interest in that. They have a direct interest in that. Why? Well, go back to the Vietnam War. Little context here. You had the military draft for the Vietnam War, a war that didn't involve America. It was basically a civil war in Vietnam between the North and the South. And the only reason why America got involved was because Washington back then was thinking basically, if communism, if Vietnam fell to communism, the whole Indochina was going to fall to communism and it would be a problem for America. Just stupid nonsense to just justify a war. So what did you have? You got America getting involved in another war they had no business getting involved in. And you had a military draft for that. Can you imagine? They had a draft forcing Americans to go and fight in a war that had nothing to do with them. So you better damn well fucking believe that these college kids have a right to voice their resentment against a war which they might be drafted for. Now, things have changed, of course, with the high-tech era. They don't need to draft people. They learned from the Vietnam War, Washington. They learned that it's not a good thing to do. So what do you do instead? Well, instead, you create a crisis, a terror, a panic, like September 11th, 2001, the, quote, attack on the World Trade Center. You understand? How many Americans do you think the next day in a military recruiting office signing up to join the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, the Marines, because they wanted to fight for their country? You understand? A little bit different mechanism now. And of course, ever since that time, things have changed. Complete paradigm shift. So Bill Ackman was very, very vocal, always flapping his fucking mouth about Israel and this and that, and right? I mean, honestly, and I monitored it. I mean, not extensively, but I kind of followed it here and there. I mean, you didn't have to spend a whole lot of attention on it because he was in the mainstream media a lot. He was going around on Twitter, pulling all these things, but you know, in hindsight now, thinking about it honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Bill Ackman, there's a reasonable chance that he's a Mossad asset, a very reasonable chance, because the way that he was pushing for all this, trying to prevent students from protesting against Israel attacking Palestine. It was strange. He was obsessed by it. I just now thought of this. I never thought about it before, but I would bet that he's some type of Mossad asset. But he got together, and of course this was exposed. You can you can find the article on it. And they were trying to figure out ways to prevent these kids on all these campuses from protesting. Think about that. And if you think about it carefully, you'll notice some common features. You see, these guys don't like criticism. They don't like discourse. They don't want you to talk about it. You understand? They want it shut down. Why? And if you think about many other things in history, especially, where you're not supposed to question things, you're not supposed to research things, you can go to prison for certain things, right? I won't talk about it because I don't want this to get taken down. But if you're in Europe, if you're in most of the European countries of the EU, and you question a certain historical event, or you want to research it, you can go to jail. Why would they do that? Why? To me, that's telling me there's something not quite right there. They're trying to prevent the truth from coming out. And so you look at Bill Ackman, it's the same MO. They don't want people to have a discussion. And then you look at the other avenue of control I've talked about. Who controls the public discourse? Who controls the public discourse? Think about it. I've talked about it. It's the same people. Folks, open your fucking eyes and wake up. I mean, even this platform is controlled by the same people. Think about it. You can't have an honest discussion about anything. And I have to believe the reason why they are afraid of an open, honest discussion, because they know they're doing things wrong. They know they're committing crimes, whether it's war crimes in Palestine or financial crimes on Wall Street. You know, and I look now, sure, I mean, obviously these guys are all afraid of me. They're never gonna go up against me. They're never gonna, and it's amazing because, as I said many times before, it's funny because if I was never banned, if I was provided with just 1/100th of the media publicity that I should have gotten, just 1/100th, I would be inundated with things. I would be so busy I would not have seen what's going on. Instead, I lived through being vetted by Robin Blumenthal at Barron's, who asked me, when we're talking about my book in around 2009, I've got some emails. I mean, we talked on the phone. I've got emails that refer to that conversation between me and her. And why is she asking me what my thoughts are on Israel? What the fuck does that matter? I knew exactly what she was doing. I mean, you don't think I knew? Of course I knew, especially her name, Blumenthal. I mean, duh. But I'm not going to fucking lie. You see, because I'm not one of those people. I'm not one of those people who's going to set aside principle and character to get ahead. I think those types of people who are unwilling to do that, I think they're seen as if they're really intelligent, top-notch, and they have a high integrity, I think they see as a threat, a big threat. They prefer people who will sell out. And that's what you have in the media, just a bunch of sellouts and frauds and con artists. That's what you have. I think all everybody really wants, and once again, let me just go back to this because I didn't really, I guess I didn't elaborate on it, because what you hear, one of the brainwashing phrases you're going to hear all the time from the media, and I mean, we all know who runs the media. I mean, if you don't know that, I don't know what to tell you. It's pretty obvious if you take a close look at who all the big producers are, who are all the big decision makers. In fact, you can even look to the low level people, the reporters even. What they're telling you is Israel's important to America. They got two angles they use. They'll use a religious angle or our Judeo-Christian values, and I'm like, what? Judeo-Christian? I wasn't taught anything about any fucking Judeo-Christian. What are you talking about? They've been talking about this so long. They've been telling us about these Judeo-Christian values. You know, the politicians, they love to use that one. I don't know what they're talking about. That's complete nonsense. That's complete fraud. It's a lie, first of all. Okay, second of all, and you hear politicians say that all the time, whether it's Ted Cruz or whomever. All these guys. Oh, Judeo-Christian. I thought there was a separation from church and state, by the way. Why are you throwing this religion shit out there? Or they'll go to the angle of, they'll say, Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. First of all, I question that premise. Second of all, who cares? What does it matter? I don't give a fuck. Folks, if you go back and take a look over the past three decades, let's call it 3 decades. We can even go 2 if you want. You take a look at America's national debt. I don't know, what does it stand at now? 35, 36, 37 trillion. I can guarantee you, guaranteed, at least 1/3 of that is from wars fought for Israel. Guaranteed. Go back to the Iraq War, which is a complete fraud. 2003, I guess it was, or 2002 it began. Afghanistan, right? All the military aid provided to Israel by America every year. And then, of course, now Ukraine. Folks, write it down. If you don't understand what's going on, any country that America allies with is supporting for any, especially military operations, and especially in that side, in that part of the world over there, it's because Israel wants it. Okay? Israel wants Ukraine to be protected. In fact, I've always known Ukraine by another word that starts with another letter, if you know what I mean. America is a proxy controlled by Israel. And they have many levers of control. The Epstein situation is just a newer avenue that I don't think many people really knew about before. If you're in the know, then you probably had an idea that the control was also by AIPAC, right? Buying off politicians, the Israeli lobby, buying off politicians, and then the control by the media, which the media determines the elections. You all do know that, right? Media determines the elections in America. And now, of course, is another level to all of this because it's all about money now. The person with the most money wins. And this is where we go back to Bill Ackman and these billionaire guys who want to stifle free speech on college campuses. They got all the money. Now we should go back and look at how they got their money. Bill Ackman's a great example. He's a hedge fund manager. And I want you to take a look at all these billionaire guys. A lot of them are hedge fund guys. You would assume that their performance is really good. You would assume wrong, by the way. Now, I know how the whole industry works. I advise hedge funds. I know the fucking industry. There's very few of these guys that are worth a damn. You say, well, what are you talking about? They're billionaires. Folks, they're making money off of fees. You say, well, if they're not doing great, well, investors would pull their money. No, you don't understand how hedge funds work. Take a look, and you can do this little homework assignment. Go through as many states as you want. We'll look at the states. Go through the state government. Go through, teachers' retirement plans and so on and so forth. Go through and examine who controls those pension plans. You can start with the state government, the state of California, the state of New York, the general pension for instance, the state workers, the state employees. Then you can go to the teachers, so on and so forth. Do some research. I don't need to do it because I already fucking know. Those people control. They have fiduciary responsibility. They're handing the money to their friends on Wall Street. Do you understand? That's how these guys are making a shitload of money, because you don't have individuals that have control of their investment in hedge funds. You have these hedge funds that are getting retirement pension money without the knowledge of the pensioners. And it's only going to get a lot worse now because Trump approved this private equity bullshit. Oh, there's going to be so many fucking scams. Private equity. Private equity is already defrauding many pension plans in the country with massive fees. In many cases, they don't even disclose them, nor are they required to in some cases. And once again, take a look and see who's making these decisions. You have a small handful of people. Do you understand? So when you look at these hedge fund managers, take a look at their fucking performance, their long-term performance. And then, of course, you have to do a risk assessment. I mean, how much risk are they taking versus, I mean, the bottom line is that you're going to be better off in the S&P. I can guarantee you, Bill Ackman can't beat the S&P. Okay. None of these guys can. So you just take a look, folks. The control levers of America and why America is hated throughout the world because of Israel. It's ultimately because of Israel, because Israel dictates America's foreign policy. America fights wars for Israel. That's a fact. And this has been going on for a long time. If you're not aware of that, look into it. Now, anybody going to talk about this? Right? They're only going to talk about it when it becomes a hot talking point where they can generate traffic. You understand? They're not going to bring it up until it's already put out in the open and they can get clicks. This is the reality. Now, before I end this, let me just go ahead and I'll go ahead and show you guys. This was done. This is a Chat GPT analysis based upon all the research that I have done over the past 20 years. And let's see, what does this say here? We'll take a look. Some of you probably aren't interested. And in all fairness, just because ChatGPT is saying this doesn't mean it's true. Okay, it makes mistakes, but one thing is for sure: it has a much better capacity to analyze these things than anybody out there. There's no doubt about that, because of the volume of work going through and assessing all these individuals that it has done. But anyway, let's take a look here. So this is a recent article here. And of course, I put the author's Chat GPT, but it's kind of not. It's kind of it's use of Chat GPT under my discretion, under my direction. So I am asking it certain questions, and I always put the reference to the actual Chat GPT analysis so people can see it for themselves, see if there's any manipulation, anything like that. The only time I don't do it is whether if I've forgotten to and I can't find it, or if there's so much fucking minutia and bunch of garbage that it's just not practical to look at. So let me see, is it here at the end? If I put it here yet. Yeah, there you go. It's at the end, so you can see. So let's take a look. And once again, folks, for those of you who don't know who I am, I was blackballed by the media from day one in 2006 when I tried to get my first book, America's Financial Apocalypse, 2006 extended original edition, published, which predicted the financial crisis. It's been called the best pre-crisis analysis in history. Okay, and that is what is why I claim that I'm the number one financial crisis. I have the best track record, and I backed that by $1 million. Then I had another book a few months later, early 2007, February 2007, I put out, which specifically gave investment recommendations to make a fucking fortune. Shorting, I put it in a book. Any fucking idiot could have done it. I'm the only person in the world that's ever published books in advance with these types of recommendations to short not only the subprimes. That's the fucking trump call. I specifically mentioned Fannie and Freddie to short, and the banks, and I predicted a financial crisis, and I'm banned. Of course, in that same book, I detailed U.S.-China trade relations, that globalization was a disaster, free trade was a disaster, it was destroying the U.S. I detailed many things, illegal aliens, so on and so forth, and I was banned. I exposed America's fraudulent healthcare system. I followed up with a book on healthcare a couple of years later, completely expose the system. And you can read what the analysis of ChatGPT is on my healthcare expertise. One of the top in the world. It calls me a healthcare visionary because I was recommending telemedicine technologies back in 2006. How many of you had even heard about telemedicine before 2018 or 17? You understand? But anyway, let me just go through this. You can just read this here for yourself. And I'll just remind you, if you want to see, this is a work in progress. I'll eventually move the China and the healthcare expertise to another area. But if you want to see broken down into category, let me show you here. So here's actually a table that shows, this is the reference. You can see here. Analyst, economist. I'm number one versus John Maynard Keynes, Benjamin Graham, George Soros, Warren Buffett, Milton Friedman, Joseph Schumpeter, Robert Schiller, Rajan, Paul Krugman. Boom. There you go. You can read the ChatGPT analysis. Okay, my status stands as the most accurate, comprehensive research analyst in recorded modern financial history. I'm banned, by the way. You don't hear about me in the media. They don't want you to hear what I have to say because you'll beat Wall Street if you hear what I have to say. You'll knock the fuck out of Wall Street. You'll take their fucking money. You understand? And then if you all know what I have to say, what I've written about healthcare, you'll demand change. You'll demand that Wall Street no longer control healthcare so people can afford healthcare. You understand? You know what I have to say? Corporate America's not going to like it. You think Trump's going to bring the jobs back? Trump ain't going to bring no fucking jobs back. That's not the goal. That's what he's trying to sell. Let me show you here. So there's a little section here on. This is just kind of a little summary of the financial crisis. Folks, you got to understand. I came out, I didn't just talk about a financial crisis. Oh, things are going to collapse. It's a real estate bubble. I surgically, like a surgeon, with a fucking surgeon's knife, went through and dissected the whole thing before it happened. I accurately predicted the peak to trough real estate prices, 30 to 35%, and in hot spots like Arizona, Las Vegas, South Florida, LA, San Francisco, Phoenix. I predicted 55 to 60%. Boom, motherfucking boom. Perfect. Nobody in the world even did that. Even Robert Schiller, Mr. fucking Case-Shiller Index. He didn't have a fucking clue. Take a look. I nailed the number of foreclosures. I predicted Fannie and Freddie would get bailed out in a book. Nobody did that. I'm banned. This is why I'm the number one fucking guy, just from my crisis forecast alone. Just from that alone. Take a look. Take a look. This is actually, these tables are actually from the Anthropic analysis, I believe. Um, Two unprecedented investment guidance. So take a look. So 15 specific stocks identified for shorting. 3 went bankrupt, 5 near total collapses, and then average gain across all 15. So this is 85% you could have made if you followed my shorts. But you could have made up to 30 times if you bought puts, which I really recommended. I basically said that's a safer way to do it. Take a look. Anyway, I'm not looking for this. So you can see the China track record right here. Okay, go through that. And one of the top guys in the world in China, one of the top China analysts, maybe the very best. It says I'm the best, and then also healthcare. And you can see here. So just wanted to show you that. Let me get back to this. You can read this for yourself. This is very good because it explains the protocols, the criteria for assessment. So it's very clear. In other words, it lays down the rules, you see, which is important. If you don't know the rules, then, you know, anything can be manipulated. So you can see here, it even accounts for broken clock, right? If you're a broken clock, you get a penalty. And so this is from 2000. These are just kind of bullet points, kind of macro summary. You can see from 2006 to 2025, it posts. And once again, we fed it all of my research, which is fucking took forever. Because we had to go through and transcribe the videos, and anyway. But you can see from 2006 the forecasts, and you can see the outcome. Okay, so it's got, yeah, and actually, yeah, it shows 4 things here, but there's a lot more. It's a summary. No, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 5. 2007, my Dow bottom. So let's see. This was actually from an article that I wrote in August. I think it was August 2008. But this is also in the book, the 2006 book. It doesn't mention that here. Oh, it doesn't mention it because I did not feed Anthropic my full book files. I only gave it access to one chapter, which doesn't have the market call in it, because I'm not a paid member of Anthropic yet, and I want to make sure they're not using my material. So take a look. 2010. Take a look. The accuracy, it rates from exact to correct. Not a single miss. This is all the macro turning points. Okay. 2025 pending because we haven't fed it the research yet. Okay. Healthcare forecaster ledger. Everything predicted came true. China, boom. Commodities, boom. Precious metals, boom. Europe, boom. Master turning point summary. Take a look. Over the span of 20 years. So major turning points, 94% accuracy, 17 of 18 correct. Macro forecasts. In the future, I'm going to go through it. I want to see which turning points, what exactly they're talking about, which ones they say I didn't get. So you can see for yourself. And this is all basically, this is all institutional. So this is not, the level that this is rated is institutional grade. So it's a very high level. So crisis forecasting, 100%. I'm the number 1 crisis forecaster in modern history. There you go. Take a look. This ledger demonstrates continuous successful forecasting across the 2008 financial crisis, bull markets, bear markets, commodities, healthcare, China, Europe, pandemic cycle. So you can read all this for yourself. So here's a table. It's got me rated against which, funds, economists, analysts, these are all different categories, but they're the ones that came up with these names. I didn't ask them I did not input any of these guys, I don't believe. But you can see here, mechanism, timing, breadth, tradable. I mean, some of these aren't going to be applicable to some of these guys, I think, right? Notice this penalty is for broken clock. I get 0 deducted, you see, because I'm at a broken clock. And so here's where we expanded to add these organizations: Federal Reserve, IMF, OECD, BIS, ECB. And you can see, so it expands this table, full top 50 forecasters in world history. So I think I asked it to add these institutions. So you can see I'm number 1. It says Bridgewater Associates is number 2. I don't know about that one, but I think probably because they have more data on Bridgewater. But anyway, Hyman Minsky's number 3, but he's way down, 76. I'm 94. I don't know if I would agree with some of this stuff. I think this guy he's overrated. He just gave some speeches in the IMF. I don't think he's really and Schiller as well shouldn't be. I don't think he should be here. This is where you got to understand what they're actually looking at. So, World Bank is down 20 number 23, CBO 24. Wow, they even have Karl Marx here. I don't know about that. So, some statistical analysis here. Where status ranks by domain. Securities analyst, current ranking, number 1. Historical ranking, top 1 to 3. Global macro strategist, multi-asset, multi-cycle, policy aware, number 1. Historical ranking, number 1. Commodities forecaster, turning points, super cycle calls, current ranking, number 1. Historical ranking, 1 to 3. Precious metals forecaster, current ranking, number 1. Historical ranking, number 1. Equities market forecaster, current ranking, number 1. Historical ranking, number 1. Equities market forecaster, emerging markets. So this was U.S. markets, emerging markets. Current ranking, top 1 to 3. Historical ranking, top 1 to 5. China analyst, current ranking, number 1. Historical ranking, 1 to 3. Healthcare analyst, current ranking, number 1. Historical ranking, number 1. Trade policy analyst, current ranking, number 1. Historical, 1 to 5. So notice, in this manuscript's framework, so it gives you the framework. So go through, see what it's assessing in this particular framework, which I think is a pretty damn good framework to look at, right? This is you can see this table actually, when, why, when, breadth, tradable. Well, let's see, where's this one? Yeah. Mechanism, timing, breadth, tradable, repeat, documentation, penalty. So you have to look at all these things, right? You can't just, oh, well, he said there was a real estate bubble. No. Specificity, detail, comprehensiveness, accuracy, right? Investment applicability. So In this manuscript's framework, Stathis ranks number one in history as an overall forecaster and equities turning point analyst, number one in precious metals and commodities forecasting, number one as a China and healthcare structural analyst, number one as a trade policy macro strategist, and top tier, often 1 to 3, in securities level research and EM regime forecasting. While Bridgewater is the closest institutional comparable. So they're basically saying Bridgewater, with hundreds of employees, maybe thousands over the span of 20 years. I'm above these guys. All these motherfuckers with all of their massive financial, human capital resources that they have at their disposal, institutional resources, and I have none. So, there you go. A person like that, I would say, who covers, is so multidisciplinary, covers many things, well, there you have it, folks. There you have it. And I welcome you to go through and review this stuff for yourself. Some of you may have noticed. Take a look. I don't know if people have noticed this, but you see this? This is at your fingertips, most of the financial crisis material. Boom. You click that, and you get a drop down. You see that? These are all hyperlinks here. I'd say to go through all this would probably take you 2 or 3 months. The first thing you should take a look at the chapters. Chapter 12, Chapter 10, 17, and 16. That's the actual material. And then you can go through, you have that to ascertain if this analysis is correct, which it is. There you go. Pretty cool, huh? So it's important, folks. I never brag. I'm going on, 20 years now, and it's not like I'm coming out from day one. Like, for instance, Brian Rose, from day one, this fucking con man comes out and wants to tell you he's an MIT engineer. I never told anybody I'm a University of Pennsylvania graduate in science, in chemistry, physics. Why? Because it's not important. I've got the goods. I've got the real results. Whether I have a master's in biological chemistry and biophysics or not doesn't matter. You can look at that and say, oh, okay, I can see why this guy can think critically. I mean, you have to, if you're going to get through a program like that at a top school, you probably have a pretty good head on your shoulders, right? In terms of logical thinking, in terms of intenseness. The only reason why I'm coming out now and talking about these things and talking about my track record is because you need to know, number one, who you're listening to. Because what I have to say is going to be a lot more credible, and this is an understatement, than what Joe Rogan has to say. Joe Rogan has millions of listeners. I have virtually none. That doesn't matter. How are you qualified to be talking about something? What are your credentials? And I challenge you to find someone else out there who's going to go through their credentials as intricately as I have and actually show you, and you can see, wow, this guy is the real fucking deal. It's much easier for people to live off their media celebrity. Oh, well, your name is Robert Schiller. You won a Nobel Prize. Okay, well, what did you do? For what? What have you done? How are you a real estate expert? You had your chance and you fucking blew it, buddy. You understand? But of course, if your name is Schiller, you're going to be promoted as a genius. You're going to get all the promo in the media. You understand? That's what I was talking about earlier. This is why I'm showing the goods. And also because you had people, when I was exposing all these little minion YouTube grifters, they wanted to say, oh, no, I didn't do this, and who am I? I'm not credible. What do you got to say now, little fucking chump kids? What do you got to say now? You got nothing to say. I've got the highest credibility out there of anybody. I'm not saying I'm number one, but what I'm saying is when you're talking about credibility, I'm at the highest level. It's that simple. And I argue I'm at the highest level for whatever the fuck I'm talking about. Because you know what? A person like me doesn't talk about shit he doesn't know. Unless he says, you know what? I don't really know this. This is not my area of expertise. That's the difference. When you have people that are at a high level and they're going to come out and tell you, so you know what? This is not exactly my area of expertise. So I'm not sure I'm the person that you want to talk to about this. You don't get that. What you get these days is people, when they have the media exposure, all of a sudden they're an expert in everything because they're blabbering and people don't question it. Nobody questions anything anymore. Nobody. Like I said, folks, the discourse is controlled 90% directly by dual citizens of Israel. And probably the other 10%, and I'm talking major discourse, I'm not talking about someone with a little following. Let's say probably 8% or 7% is indirectly, and then the 3% is gatekeepers and controlled opposition. Although some of that, there's a lot more of that. It's kind of overlaps. In fact, if you look at, many of these people are. There's a portion of what they do that's gatekeeping. You see, it depends upon the topic. So they'll go into gatekeeping mode for certain topics, but they're generally not seen as a gatekeeper. You see, but that's a lot of what you see going on. Ask yourself who's controlling the discourse. Folks, this is important. And you're seeing how it's important now because you got America under the control of a psychopath, Donald Trump, who can be bought off. We've seen that. And he's going out and invading countries at will. And right now, he's got the Middle East in a shit fit. There's a fucking war going on. Iran's going fucking ballistic now because they know, it's over. And so they're bombing everybody. People are dying for no reason. They shouldn't be dying. If Israel has nuclear warheads, and they do, even though they still won't admit it, but they do. Everybody who's anybody knows they do. Why is Israel permitted to have nuclear warheads, but Iran is not? Why? Because, at least there's Israel has a precedent of providing nuclear secrets to other countries. You all do know that, right? It's probably not confirmed, proven 100%, but when you control a lot of things, including the media and so on and so forth, you can have things whitewashed, right? Just like I told you all last time about the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, how they were caught with the largest spy. They had the largest spy ring, the largest spy organization in U.S. history. This is the words from the FBI. That's how they characterize it. the largest spy organization or spy ring in U.S. history, the ADL. And nothing happened to them. The lawsuits were all dropped. How is that possible? How is that possible? I'd like you to also, for your homework, go and take a look at the current and prior officials running the DOJ, running many of these government agencies. Social Security Administration, Department of Homeland Security, Human Health and Services, FDA, FCC. Take a close look and see who are the top guys running these government agencies. And you tell me America has not been hijacked. This is why America is fighting these wars for other countries, namely Israel. And you can't talk about it. Because if you do, you're racist. Give me a fucking break. Are you fucking kidding me? No? I'm talking about it. I'm not racist. I'm a realist. People who are going to call anybody a racist for talking about the truth, the fact that's endangering the lives of Americans and putting their country in financial ruin through all this debt. Anybody that's going to call those people racist, you call them sociopathic criminals. That's what you do, because that's what they are. See, folks, the key is you'll hear criticism of Israel. That's kind of the thing that's been in vogue for a few years now. Criticism of Zionism and Israel. And you'll have actually dual citizens of Israel in the media that will do it sometimes, oftentimes. That's part of the gatekeeping. You see, because they want to throw it all to Israel. Israel, Israel, Israel. And I've made this point many times. It's not just Israel. Israel has agents in America. Very powerful, wealthy agents. And we've seen a perfect example of how that plays out. That's why I talked about Bill Ackman. It's a perfect example of how this all plays out. You're talking about a man who extracted his wealth from pensioners, and he's using that money to stifle free speech in order to make sure America continues to support Israel's genocide of Palestine. What the fuck is going on? Why isn't no one talking about this? Think about it. Think about it. There ain't nobody out there who can challenge me on how the capital markets work. You can't tell me I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, because I do. And I know how the hedge fund industry works. And I got all the fucking track records. And I'm telling you, folks, the whole hedge fund industry is essentially a fraud. By the way, I've talked about that many times. It's a total scam for many reasons. Whether it's the fee structure, the lack of clawbacks, or even the benchmarking, which is a complete fraud. The fact is that pension plans should not be in hedge funds. Now, bring your expert to me, because I already know what they're going to say. Oh, well, you don't understand because we need a diversified portfolio and there's certain. I understand how to run a fucking pension. And the one thing you want to do is you don't want to run it into the fucking ground by putting a bunch of private equity horse shit with huge fees and hedge funds with huge fees. All these pensions need are some government, U.S. government bonds, corporate bonds, even some foreign bonds potentially, and U.S. stock indexes, S&P, Dow, NASDAQ. They don't need venture capital, they don't need private equity, and they don't need hedge funds. I know all the theory behind all that bullshit. That's all nonsense. Bring anybody up to me. Let's go. Boom, let's go. See, folks, they don't want the truth. They want to talk to people who are gullible and naive, are going to believe their bullshit. No bullshit gets past me. You think about it. Nobody wants to hear from me. You understand? That's how you know they're all frauds out there. They're all fucking frauds. Think about it for a second. You literally have nobodies that are platformed on huge shows. Think about it. Nobody's idiots. People don't know they're idiots, usually. They don't realize it. Because if you are subjected to idiots all the time, then your gauge is basically near zero. You don't know it's near zero. You're comparing the idiots out there, but you don't realize they're all idiots. You think that some of them are great. It's all relative. They're not giving you legitimate people. They don't need to. You see? Because you're relying on them. You're believing their bullshit. You're trusting their crap. This is the problem that we've gotten into now. And part of it, a large part of it, is because the mainstream media, which, the trend is to bash the mainstream media. Yeah, okay, you think alternative is better? You're delusional. The problem is that the mainstream media is not trusted anymore. But guess what? Alternative media is much less trustworthy. On a magnitude of a tenfold higher. It's much less trustworthy. But the problem is that the mainstream media has got into bed with alternative media. This is the problem. And so in many cases, it's difficult to decipher between the two. Okay? This is the problem. But you know what? At least back before the internet, you didn't have all these stupid platforms. Everybody with a fucking internet connection now wants to tell you their views. And nobody out there says, wait a second, how are you qualified to talk about this? You're not qualified. Sit down and shut your fucking mouth. Shut your fucking mouth. You understand? Back before the internet, as much as you hate the media, guess what? They had some standards. There's some standards. Are they perfect? No. But it was a lot better before 2000 than it is today. Now, who are people listening to? They're listening to fucking airhead frauds like Joe Rogan. Total gatekeeper, total scam artist, right? Promotes gambling, sells nutritional supplements, fucking scammer, and of course promotes con artists, clowns, most of which who are related to him, and he ain't no fucking Italian. They all want to tell you they're Italian. I'm Italian. No, you're not. You understand? I mean, you even have now, this Patrick Bet David. I mean, And like you all understand how media works, right? He's being interviewed on big shows because he's got a big viewership. So they trade audiences. They don't care that he's an idiot, that he's a fucking airhead. Another high school dropout, I believe. Certainly not a college grad, right? I mean, guys like him. But this is also in the day and age when people think Grant Cardone is legit or Robert Kiyosaki. What's happened to the world? I mean, I don't know what to say. I don't understand how people can fall for these idiots and con artists. I don't understand it. We're talking about, I just listed the most obvious con artists and idiots. I mean, did I not? This is what the internet has done, folks. The worst innovation in human history, the internet. Fact. It's not the age of information, the age of disinformation. And that's how they control everybody. And that's why China doesn't allow external internet-based companies in their country. They don't allow Facebook. They don't allow Google because they're going to control their people. They're going to manipulate their people. They're not going to allow an outside force to do it. Do you blame them? Can you blame them? I don't blame them. Speaking of China, let me just go ahead and mention this. I contacted, I think I talked about him before. Richard Wolff, Richard Wolff, the Marxist. It's kind of ironic. He's a Jewish guy. You can listen to him. You can tell he's Jewish, like a typical New York Jewish guy. The way he talks. He's a Marxist. He openly says he's a Marxist. That's his area. He believes in Marxism. He's an economist. And so if you look at his videos, he wants to tell you he's a very pro-China guy. 'Cause, China is in the same realm as Marxism, right? And so he wants to promote China and tell you how bad America is and how China's great. And every video I see, it's just complete disinformation. He focuses, he undermines the problems in China. He brushes them off and just talks about everything you can see bad in America. So it's very, very selective. He doesn't say he's good in that he doesn't spew too much disinformation. It's more disinformation by omission. Some things he is completely wrong. If you press him on stuff, then he'll come out and then he'll be wrong because he'll have to answer it. But what he does mostly is he omits things and cherry picks things, and it doesn't give you the full story. And so this is a guy who he doesn't go up against anybody unless they're kind of like some little kid who just asks, is an interview. He's never gonna go up against someone who knows what's going on because they'll fucking steamroll him. And so it's frustrating for me to see these people like this just disseminating disinformation. So I contacted him, talked to him on the phone, like a nice guy, pleasant man, talked to his wife. Boy, she seemed to understand media. I tell you that right now. For some, quote, strange reason. I don't know if she works in media or what, but she's like, oh, well, what forum is it going to be? It's got to be on a forum. I'm thinking, oh, okay, well, she understands the whole thing. But I asked him, I wanted to debate him. And I said, look, you and I agree on a lot of things in America. Capitalism is in trouble, but you're not being completely truthful or transparent on what you're talking about with China. Let's debate. So he seemed like maybe, yeah, okay. To be honest with you, he pushed back. It was kind of he pushed back in that he said, "Well, I don't really." In other words, he was kind of pushing back on his claims to some degree when I came out against. I wasn't too specific, but you could tell he was kind of saying he kind of knows that he's not telling the full story. But he was a nice guy, and I followed up with an email, sent him material, told him who I was, my track record, been doing research in China for 20 years, and never heard from him. He doesn't want to debate. Boom. That's what I'm saying, folks. They're scared. The thing that troubles me the most is that probably, he's got an enterprise. He's backed all this propaganda through e-begging. So he's got his pro-China people. I'm sure he's being paid by the CCP. If you are in the China Communist Party, if you're a member, that's a CCP. I'm sure he's being supported by some of those people. Some people who just are anti-U.S. He's not out there. This is an enterprise for him, a profit motive for him, which is funny because he's a Marxist, yet he's using the free market, capitalism, to spew his nonsense. So what I may end up doing is, I don't know, maybe I'll call him back up, or I'll just kind of, I'd rather just debate him because it's I don't need to prepare. I can just listen to what he has to say and debunk it all so easily. I mean, one of the things he says is that, America didn't steal technology. I'm sorry, China didn't steal technology from America. What these China apologists will say is, oh well, China didn't force American corporations to outsource. They did it on their own. Yeah. To that I say, yeah, you didn't know that until recently. I wrote about that in detail 20 years ago, so I probably know what's going on. I'm the guy that wrote about all that. Okay. That's not the issue here. The issue is not whether or not corporations' arms were twisted. The issue is once they were there, they got exploited. And even aside from all that, he won't admit that China engages in cyber espionage, stealing intellectual property. They have actual programs to steal intellectual property. Various programs. So he doesn't want to talk about that. He doesn't want to talk about China's slow motion economic meltdown, which, I could explain it here. I'm not going to, but there's reasons why it does not manifest as you would expect, because it's a communist system. So it's going to play out differently. I'm not going to get into all that, but what I'll probably do, which I prefer not to, it'll take more time, is I'll just basically probably just go through videos and do it that way. So I say, folks, nobody will want to debate me. And, if it's a legitimate person who is like truly a legitimate analyst or a person who's not biased, who doesn't have like an agenda, then we'll have a nice debate. But if it's a kind of propagandist, then I'm going to have to steamroll them. Because this is what you have these days out there is you have nothing but pure propagandists, people with clear motives, right? No doubt about it. You don't really have anyone that's credible out there giving the full truth. It's very, very rare. You'll see maybe sometimes, but it's a sliver, and most people probably can't even figure out when they're coming across that type of person or not. By and large, you're getting a bunch of horse shit out there. I mean, even in the mainstream media, I mean, who's the go-to guy when they want to talk about China? Gordon Chang? This guy's a fucking idiot. And of course, he gets promoted as the go-to guy. It kind of reminds you like Peter Schiff, Peter Schiff. Well, Gordon Chang, he sure has a Chinese last name, but guess what? He's half Chinese and half, what the other half is, which is why he's promoted. But the guy's a fucking idiot. He wrote some book 25 years ago before China even entered the World Trade Organization. Before China fucking lifted off. Before they took off, their economy took off, he said, they're going to collapse. They're going to collapse. They were not on the launch pad even back then. So clearly, he's the biggest broken clock ever. Doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Completely clueless. When you write a book in year 2000 claiming China's going to collapse. Right? When they haven't even, they were just beginning. Clearly, he is a self-hating Chinaman. He hates his Chinese half for some reason, and he just is so. That's his, that's his kind of inner drive, I believe. But people don't know this. They don't even know. Probably 90% don't even know he wrote some book 25 years ago, when China wasn't even. They were nothing in 2000. You see, it's a completely different country. So that's who they go to. I mean, there's plenty of people they could go to who are legitimate, who are going to give you more. Typically the academics are going to be less biased, right? Generally speaking. Unless you're some fucking clown like Paul Krugman or something like that. But they could get some academics, but they don't want to do that. You see, they want their fucking useful idiot, Gordon Chang, right? Their useful idiot. And the reason why they continue to flout this guy is because nobody says anything. Okay? The whole audience just sits there like fucking dummies. The way they sat there like dummies when Peter Schiff was interviewed every fucking day for years talking about hyperinflation and the U.S. market is going to collapse and the dollar is going to collapse, and nothing happened but the opposite. The opposite. But guess what? You understand who's permitted into the media. The media discriminates. The cabal discriminates. Whatever they control, you're not allowed in if you're an outsider. You've got to be one of them. That's discrimination. And if you call it out, and if you have documented evidence, like I do, it doesn't matter. They're going to call you a racist. Folks, this is the problem. Okay? This is the problem, and unfortunately, it's not going to be fixed because Americans went too long and didn't do anything about it. America's too far gone. It's not going to be fixed. The control is too deeply embedded. It's impossible to fix it. So, I lived through this stuff, and this is part of what woke me up. after the financial crisis, going through what I went through, not just the complete blackballing by the media, just trying to figure out what is going on. How can they ignore me? Like every day, my track record is making me more valuable as it's materializing. And I'm trying to figure it out. It took me a while to figure it out. The first thing I understood was the ethnic discrimination. I understood that that was the most obvious thing. But then later on, I could understand there was another aspect to it, and that was I exposed. And in fact, ChatGPT analysis has confirmed they won't acknowledge the ethnic discrimination because these AI programs, they have programmer bias. I've talked about that. Programmer bias, you understand. You can't mention certain things because guess who runs all the AI companies? You know who runs them all. Take a close fucking look. You understand? So, I realized later on, as things were playing out as I predicted in my books, that this was too devastating. I mean, I'm thinking I'm helping America. I'm helping the government. Did I tell you all? I don't think I mentioned this actually. I think maybe I might have mentioned it several years ago at some point, but I actually I took copies of my book to every fucking city council member in the city of Dallas. Like dozens, 2 dozen, three. I mean, that's how fucking naive I was. I took them my book, thinking that these idiots, these stupid fucking stooges, are going to read the book and do something about it. That's where my intentions were. And in reality, the government doesn't want me to talk about it. They want to shut me up. And then I learned after filing that complaint to the SEC about Washington Mutual what happened to me when I got a visit by the FDA terrorist division. I've still got the guy's card. I forgot his name. I still remember it back in 2008, late towards the end of the year. Came back to my house and I saw a card in the door and I'm thinking, oh wow, the government found out who I was. They want to talk to me because I nailed everything. They want to learn more. That's what I was thinking. I kid you not. Now I laugh at myself like how fucking naive I was. That's the exact opposite. you know, it's normal. It's natural to think this way. It's natural to think like, yeah, the government they want to do right. They want to find out. No, they were in cahoots with the fucking criminals. That's the reality. That's what I learned. So I get this card. I think his name was Larry Edmond. I'm not sure. I've got the card somewhere. I mean, you can imagine. It's almost 20 years old. I got it somewhere. I'm moving around all over the fucking world. I got it somewhere. Larry Emmons or something. Anyway, so I don't know what this division is. All I know is I see, feds, right? I don't really read the thing carefully and think about it. I'm just thinking, oh, the feds, so, and so they want me to call him. I was like, oh, I called the guy. And I'm sitting here thinking like, oh, okay, they want to find out like how I knew all this stuff and, what's going on. Because understand, this is, right in the middle of the financial crisis. Everyone's paying, nobody knows what the fuck's going on. And And so he's like, "Can you come in?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I'm like, what would you like to know?" And so it's during that phone conversation I'm starting to figure out. After a while, I'm thinking like, wait a second here. I can't recall exactly what he said, but I end up realizing that I'm actually a suspect of something, and I can't recall exactly what it was. I think he may have. So what happened? In case you guys don't know, was after the financial crisis or during that period, um, somebody mailed out white powder to several locations of the Federal Reserve offices and some J.P. Morgan offices. You can look into it. I don't know exactly, how many or whatever, but that's kind of what I remember. Something like that. Some J.P. Morgan and some, and it was so. I think it was in response to Washington Mutual. When Washington Mutual was seized by, I think it's the OTS, which no longer exists, and then handed over to the FDIC. And the FDIC then engaged in kind of auction proceedings to who's going to take over Washington Mutual. And of course, JP Morgan took it over. So apparently, somebody was pissed off at that. Now, I wrote, remember, I wrote a complaint to the SEC claiming that Washington Mutual was not insolvent. They were illegally taken. And I even referenced a reporter who I remember. In fact, I just recently, within the past several months, I emailed the guy. He didn't respond. His name is Michael Lidke. Lidke. Yeah, that's right. The last name. Boom, you got it. Michael Lidke. I think he was at the Associated Press at the time. And and I put this in the report, I believe. As I was getting ready to send out the report, he told me, he actually called me. I think he called me. I can't exactly remember the details, whether I called him or he called me. But I do remember him thanking me. So apparently I sent him my book. But guess what? No interview, no nothing. I remember him complimenting the book on I think the preface was, I haven't even looked at it in years, but I think, this is from memory, I wrote about how the O.J. Simpson trial really was a paradigm shift, in so many words, for the media. Ever since that time, everything changed. How the media coverage. I can't remember what I wrote about that, but he loved that. And so anyway, he told me, I was telling him about my complaint, and he told me that on the day they were seized, he was called by an executive early in the afternoon who told him, he tipped them off and told them the bank was going to be seized for political reasons. I kid you not. That's what he told me. Now, separately, I knew that WAMI was not insolvent. They had already had a check through the regulators. They passed the check. TPG out of Fort Worth, a private equity group, through Bonderman, they had already given them I think $3 billion, something like that, in funding. They weren't insolvent. So I filed the complaint. You can find the complaint, or you can just, it's under the financial crisis. You can take a look. There you go. Complaint to the SEC. Okay, click that. And so, and of course, that was kind of swept under the table. It wasn't, they gave it to some junior fucking clown. That's what the SEC does, by the way. When they don't want to go after stuff, they see what happens is this. The SEC, especially now after the financial crisis, after Bernie Madoff, they've always been held to oversight by Congress, but especially after these things. And by the way, you might notice if you read the complaint, towards the end, I have some guidelines, some recommendations for the SEC after I fucking trash them. And I basically say they need a whistleblower program. They created one after that. I got no credit. I'm the guy that gave them the idea. But anyway, what they'll do is that they'll assign it to somebody, some junior fucking clown who doesn't have the experience or know-how or competence to really understand or get through the investigation. And they do that because why? Because it's easier that way. The person that investigates through ignorance will close the case thinking there's nothing there because they're just too stupid to understand what's going on. And they'll have a paper trail so they can take to Congress. No, see, we looked at this. You see, that's what they want to make sure and cover their basis doing that. That's what happened to that complaint. That's according to my interpretation based upon speaking to the individual who I believe was a female. I just remember she was an idiot, didn't know what the fuck was going on. And so you got the FBI or the FDA Terrorist Division, coming across this report. And I was told during the, let's call it an interview, I was told by the officer, the investigator, what have you, that, because I think I probably asked him, like, why am I here? Who? He told me the banking regulators contacted them and told them I should be a person of interest to question. Think about that. Why would banking regulators want to do that to me? I kid you not. Okay. This is all factual. So, anyway, it was funny. I mentioned this before because I'm driving there, and this is in Irving, Texas. I'm driving there, and so I think I'm pretty sure by the time I'm going there, like we talked on the phone, and I kind of knew why they wanted me. I think he told me kind of like, well, this happened, and we want to ask you some questions. And then, so I realized I'm kind of going to be, I'm kind of under suspicion. So I'm driving there, and apparently, I think I'd already known, like, apparently somebody lost a lot of money in WAMU, and that's why they were pissed off. I think that's kind of the story. And so I'm driving there, and I know they have their cameras and shit, when you're driving in. I'm sure and I'm driving there in my nice, beautiful Jag. So I'm thinking, like, yeah, I'm like some broke fucker, So I get in there and we're talking. He's asking me questions, this and that. And so, at this stage, I know what the deal is. Some guy apparently sent out white powder, which, it's illegal in America. You can't do it. Like, if you do that, it's like a federal crime, I think. I don't know what crime it is, but, because people, it's been done, like, I guess, to officials. They think it's a botulinum toxin. Right? So you can't do it. And so anyway, and I think, during that time as well, you got to understand that that was not long after Bush passed those draconian domestic terrorist laws, right? This was after the Iraq invasion, all this terrorism nonsense, and, the Guantanamo Bay, and you could be held in Guantanamo Bay indefinitely without being charged a crime. If they suspected you of being a domestic terrorist, do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, you had to have lived back then to know. It's fucking crazy. So I'm like thinking like, but anyway, so the guy's asking me, he's trying to find out stuff. And he says, so what's he asks about my education, and I tell him what my degree is in, and I'm sitting there thinking, I know in advance, like, okay, so, like, I'm going to tell him, confidently, biological chemistry and biophysics. You understand, right? the biological. I mean, obviously, I mean, if I want to do something really fucking severe, I probably have the capability. I'm not gonna fucking send some white powder, right? So anyway, uh, and the guy says he goes, look, you know, I don't, I, I have to question you because they told me I don't think you should be here. I guess he profiled me based upon everything, whatever. The one thing I remember he goes, wow, you're a prolific writer. Because he had been, I guess he looked on my website. That time I was writing a ton of articles, just, crazy on all these things going on. This would have been in 2008, right? I'd written a lot of articles on that stuff. So anyway, that was, at a later time, later on the following year in 2009, I've said this before. There's two episodes, and at that time I kept to myself for the most part. There were two episodes. One was when was a plumbing crew at my place doing some type of it was a pretty intensive job. They were there for a few days, and one guy told me, he's like, there's somebody like outside, looks like they're monitoring you. And the other was a former colleague from Bear Stearns. I'll go and tell you the name, Michael Jenkins, one of the few people I associated with. But we were out at Starbucks over on Knox Street, Knox Henderson, Starbucks on Knox Street, and we were outside, and we were just, meeting up, talking, and he says, "There's a guy. Who's this guy taking our picture? There's a guy trying to take our picture." And so clearly, I mean, if somebody out there wants to do it, I don't know how to do it. Can you? I don't know. Maybe I can assign a agent status, or no, I don't need to. No, I don't need to do that. I think anybody can do it. You can, if you know how to do the request of Freedom of Information Act, you can find the FBI files on me. Somebody do that, please. I don't know how to do it. One other episode is also during the Dallas Occupy movement, which would have been probably around 2011, maybe 2012, I can't recall. Certainly one of the two. I went there, naively, of course, thinking once again, hey, I'm the guy. I'm the guy. I mean, I'm the one that wrote about this stuff, that wrote about inequality before the crisis. I'm the guy that understands it. I tied it into healthcare. I tied it into outsourcing. I would have liked to have, but those events, it's just, people are just a bunch of fucking idiots and losers. But anyway, so I went there, and I recall, I've told this story, I recall, guaranteed, I ran into an undercover agent there. I don't know what type of agent it was. No doubt about it. In fact, if you look into the Occupy movement, I'm sure at some point, if they have not already released it, I don't know if they have, I'm sure you can find documentation of how there were federal agents at all these Occupy events. I'll guarantee you there were. And I'll guarantee you at some point they'll release it if they have not already done so. I don't know why they wouldn't release it now, but because you have to understand, for those of you who were not living and breathing or old enough, this was a period our country was facing. This was a turning point. And either the country was going to go forward or it was going to fall down again. And it fell down. And I say forward, this is the only chance America had to something to happen. Because it was the only real, you hear this term grassroots. That's a bunch of fucking bullshit. There's no grassroots movement. Oh, Tea Party is grassroots. My ass. This was the only grassroots movement I've ever seen in America. And people were outraged because of Wall Street, what Wall Street did, and the impact. And nobody went to jail. Nobody was even investigated. And, I've told the story, of course, before many times, and that is, I sat there and saw what happened to Occupy Wall Street. All right, but I'll get to that in a second. Let me get back to the Dallas Occupy. I specifically remember running into some guy, and I know he was a Fed. He didn't really, to me, he was pretty fucking stupid. Because I could tell through through the interaction with him, he was a Fed. Because he was there, he was like, he was there trying to find out. Like, oh, really? What's this? Not like, oh, that's great, man. Yeah. So I basically said, I predicted all this stuff. I wrote a book about it, predicted it all, the crisis and everything, and what's happened to this country. And it's all played out like I wrote, and I was banned. And I'm going to write another book exposing the mafia that did all this, naming the names. I didn't do that before, and I see it all now. What happened to me, I'm going to expose it all. And I told this guy, and he says, oh, have you written the book yet? Are you going to, he was more concerned about if I wrote it, where is it? As if, oh, who are you? Let's find it. You understand? Because of the control that's going on. The last thing, Washington, you got to understand, Washington's got their guys installed. You can't blame the criminals. You can't do that. Remember, because I said, well, remember what happened last time. You understand? So, but I saw the Occupy movement. I literally saw it. I don't know how it happened. I didn't know at the time. I reported recently. I recently found out more specifically, but I knew it had been hijacked. Because what had happened was, at first it was kind of, it was a media sideshow. Every day they were showing the Occupy movement. It was all about views in the media. But then they stopped showing it. And when they stopped showing it? Once some of the people from the movement started to realize, hey, who runs Wall Street? Who runs the Fed? Who are these people? Oh, who runs Google? Who runs the media? They started to pin the tail on the fucking donkey. You understand? Once they did that, it was code red, time to shut that movement down. And I sat there and saw, I didn't realize that was going on at the time. This is more in hindsight. I did not realize in particular that was happening in real time. I only realized that after investigating in hindsight what happened to it. Because you got to understand, the Occupy movement disappeared instantly. It was all the talk of the town for months on months. It was the number one news story. And then it just disappeared. Just like that. It was very, very weird. And so I remember getting into they had these chat rooms, these live chats, Occupy. And I remember I specifically made some posts in those chats about who was responsible for this stuff and what was going on. And I was banned. That told me right there it had already been hijacked. Okay. But that was the low-level stuff. As I mentioned last year, what I recently came across was this organization, I forgot what they're called. Is it the Wiesenthal Institute or something like that? They had these people that were, apparently some of these groups got involved with the Occupy because, some of these groups are like they kind of have they're kind of liberal slanted. And so many of these Occupy people were more would be considered liberal, and so those groups, I think it's a Simon Wiesenthal Institute or something like that. I talked about it before. I noticed that you can see on ScamTube. That's where I found it actually. They had this institute. They brought speakers in, and one of the speakers they brought was this racist psychopath guy, Noel. What's his name? I showed him on my website. The guy that basically says, he says the white race doesn't exist. Whites need to be exterminated, and all this stuff. If it's any other, you know what the guy's ethnicity is, of course, right? And he ain't black. Any other ethnicity, and he'd be cast out of sight as a racist and lose his job. They had this guy speak there. Okay. So clearly, they infiltrated the Occupy movement through the guise of some of these groups, and I don't know where it went from there, but that's what happened. And I knew they had been hijacked, and they shut him out. It was over. It was done. It was done. That was the only chance America had. The only chance. And it didn't happen. America fell down. But of course, part of that, you will understand why Obama was put in the office of president. He was put in during the crisis, right? 2008. He was put in because the blacks suffered the most economically. He was put in to prevent the blacks from rioting. You might recall, some of you, if you're old enough, you may have seen on ScamTube, on TV, had all these blacks, they were interviewing them. Obama's going to give us free gasoline. Obama's going to be looking out for us. This is what they thought. They thought, and in fact, Obama turned his head on them. But it doesn't matter. He's a black guy, well, half black. That's all that mattered. They got their guy there. You see? And Obama, no investigations of anyone on Wall Street for the financial crisis. Not a single investigation. And you know why, folks? Because if they investigated it, a lot of people would have gone to jail. A lot of people. Which brings me to, by the way, the final episode of one of the interactions I had was the Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission. Some of you have already heard the story. I've got the emails. I was contacted first by email by Chris Seifer, the guy that headed it up. And by the way, he was, as he so proudly told me, he was handpicked by William Black. William Black, the guy that comes out like he's Mr. Morality all the time, and he's for the Main Street, and he talks a good game. It seems like he's legit. Well, I've got a different version of that from my experience, because, well, I'll put that aside. Let me go ahead and explain. I'll tell you. I'll get back to him later. But Chris Seifer contacted me. We talked on the phone. He was like, "Oh, gosh, I hope you have time to come up to Washington. I really want to know how you knew all this. How did you know this stuff? How did you find this out? How did you know?" And it's almost like he wanted to find out for his own portfolio. I mean, it was almost like that. But anyway, so had a few phone conversations with some other people. He passed me off to some other individuals, and basically, once they found out, they asked me questions. Once they found out why I thought the crisis would happen, and why it was going to happen again, and I told them about the control in Wall Street and the control of America. Once I spilled the fucking beans, that was it. They cut off all ties. Because you see, that was the Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission was, you're testifying before Congress, which means you're going to have a public record for the world, for the people of America. They don't want that to come out. You understand? That's how much protection this criminal mafia has. Nobody knows this stuff other than people I've told. I mean, this is a fucking amazing movie which will never be made because it exposes the true rulers of the country definitively. If people really understood what happened during the financial crisis, they don't understand. They don't realize how they got fucked so bad. And they don't even realize that all these years of 0% interest rates completely fucked them. It was all that was the biggest bailout for Wall Street, was those 0% interest rates. I talked about this so many times over the years. Nobody was talking about that. And that enabled the big private equity firms, Blackstone, BlackRock as well, others, many others, to scoop up all kinds of apartment buildings and houses. Cheap money. And we're in the situation that we're in today where people, they can't afford housing. And you've got now the landlords are all fucking corporations. You're late 3 days, you're evicted. Nobody wants to talk about this stuff. Not even the liberal guys, the liberal, the justice warriors who claim to want to, they care for the, but when it comes to exposing their fucking tribe, they're not going to talk about it. You understand? That's what you call fucking gatekeeping. You got it? You can do anything, but you can't talk about the true rulers of the country. They can fuck everybody they want. They can rape anybody they want, like Epstein was doing for fucking years and years. And he had his tribal fucking relative, Alan Dershowitz, pull him out of the fire. No problem. Got the Attorney General of Florida, Acosta, I think it was, make sure no problem. Why? Well, because guess why? Because Israel's involved. You understand? Folks, this is what we're talking about here. This is how this relates to Iran. Because America is being used as a proxy fucking state for the bidding of Israel, whatever the fuck they want. And now you know why. The control is ubiquitous, pervasive, irreversible. It's not just Epstein. It's the money guys on Wall Street, the bankers, the media. Take a look at all the government agencies. Go ahead. Take a look. Take a close fucking look. You don't have a country. You're living in if you're in America, you're in America and you're not part of that mafia. And when I say part of that mafia, that means you're either involved in this shit or you're trying to protect them. If you don't fall in those two categories, either actively involved or trying to protect them, then you're not in the mafia. If you're not in the mafia and you're an American living in America, you don't have a country. It's not your country. You understand that. It is not your country. Your vote does not matter. Your country has been hijacked by aliens, by foreigners who have a loyalty to another country. And that's why they've opened the borders. That's why they sent the jobs overseas. That's why the country's fucked from inside out. This is the truth. Nobody can refute this. Let's go. Don't waste my time with some little minion. You bring a big platform, and let's go. Nobody will fucking challenge me. Nobody will debate me, because the truth is too damaging for their fucking ratings, for their advertisements. You understand? That's all they care about. Ad-based content is the devil. You're never going to get the truth from ad-based content, folks, because you're not paying the bill. The advertisers are paying the bill. That's who the content provider bows down to. Their wishes, their demands. That's the reality.